Taoiseach, do you accept that the debt crisis in Greece is about EU elites trying to force the government of Greece into accepting an outcome that contravenes its electoral mandate? They want the Greek government to do what you and Labour did. You tore up your mandate, reneged on your election promises, and undermined, and this is a crucial issue, undermined the right of people to assert democratic control over decisions which affect our lives. And that, Taoiseach, is the big question facing all citizens of the European Union today, including Irish citizens. Do citizens have the right to assert democratic control over decisions which affect our lives? Now, you obviously do not believe this. This is at the heart of the crisis in Greece. It's also, as I've said, a huge issue here. And that is why it does not suit you to have a government in Greece which puts forward alternatives to the austerity policies which have increased inequality in many EU states, including in this one. Your water charges, a Fianna Fáil idea to give them credit, are part of this. So is forced emigration, inequality, child poverty, a low-wage economy, the lack of social housing and the rundown of public services. And I read Minister Varadkar now admitting that the health service needs another €1 billion just to meet existing demands. Will you supply this? Of course you won't. But you will impose the repayment of €181 billion in debt, created by your friends in the golden circles, by the greed of the elites on Irish people for generations to come. And I note also that Minister Kathleen Lynch now admits something we've always known, that there are simply not enough hospital beds to cater for citizens who are ill. So will you accept that this is the price that you force our people to pay and expect the people of Greece to pay, because you kowtow to a right-wing ideology and because you shamefully are uncritical and subservient to Brussels?
Well, I disagree profoundly with your comments, Deputy Adams. The situation is, as I outlined yesterday, the democratically elected Prime Minister of... Well, I disagree profoundly with your comments, Deputy Adams. The situation a few weeks, and has outlined both for the European Council and for the leaders of the Eurozone what he sees as a vision for his country. He's entitled to outline what that vision is. And he says, in respect of generating social consent in Greece, that he has to deal with corruption, he has to deal with structural changes, he has to deal with an infrastructure package, he has to become competitive, and he has to have a taxation system that actually works. Now, I know that the party sent over a member to your own conference in Derry, indicating where you were headed in respect of delivering for Ireland. Well, I disagree profoundly with that, Deputy Adams, where you were headed in respect of delivering for Ireland. Would have anything to do with the situation like unfortunately now pertains in Greece, where we have great empathy with the people who are now struggling outside closed banks. I'd make the point again. The government of Greece are perfectly entitled to call a referendum and have their people decide on what the question might be. Unfortunately, the deal wasn't on the table to be part of that referendum, and I understand that papers have been exchanged, and there is a further conference call with the Ministers for Finance of the Eurozone at 4:30 this afternoon, and perhaps some progress might be made there. I also note some comments from politicians in Greece that it may be that the referendum might not be held at all. But I think if it is going to be made there, I also note some comments from politicians in Greece wish to stay as part of the European Union and as part of the Eurozone. And apparently that's the case. Unfortunately, the the negotiators who apparently that's the case. Unfortunately, without concluding those debates, you yourself have some experience of what it means to do that, and you also know from experience that the place to settle those differences is at the table. And I repeat again that I'm glad to see there's some movement from the government of Greece. I'm glad to see there's a reciprocal acceptance of consideration of what they're now talking about.
Thank you.
But clearly, the overriding issue is for the Greek government to say to their citizens, we're having this referendum on Sunday. Now, who knows what may happen with the discussions that are currently taking place with the Eurozone Ministers for Finance this afternoon and possibly later this week. So it's a state of considerable flux, Deputy Adams. The point is that the ordinary people in Greece are now suffering and suffering great hardship because of the failure to negotiate politically. And as said before, the institutions and the leaders of the European Union and the Eurozone are more than willing to support in whatever way possible the citizens of Greece, that they can have their aspiration of being part of the Eurozone, of being a country that can get out of this recession and introduce the changes that the Prime Minister himself spoke of very eloquently at the meeting in Brussels, both on Friday and on the previous Monday.
Deputy Gerry Adams for a supplementary question.
Eloquently at the meeting in Brussels, both on Friday and on the previous Monday.
Deputy Gerry Adams for a supplementary question.
And tardy, and then you give us your usual rambles around Aaron type of non-answer. The Greek government is negotiating, but how would you know? They're doing something you never did, which is trying to negotiate on behalf of the people who give them a mandate. Now,
Sorry,
and I do, as you've said, have some experience of negotiation. But let's just try to get to the bottom of.
Sorry,
and I do, as you've said, have some experience of negotiation. But let's just try to get to the bottom of your government has been closely associated with. The government which Greek citizens rejected at the last general election was led by New Democracy, a sister party of Fine Gael in the EU Parliament. The other major component of that coalition government was PASOK, a party which implemented the original Greek bailout and which is a sister party of the Irish Labour Party. So a party which implemented the original Greek bailout and which is are inextricably linked to the parties which were in power. So the two government parties in this state are inextricably linked to the parties which were in power.
Question, please, Deputy.
Did Fine Gael or Labour ever speak to their Greek counterparts about their pursuit of disastrous policies which crushed the Greek economy? And if not, if you haven't spoken to them about what they were doing, doesn't your current posturing in relation to the new Greek government, which has already started to implement a programme of genuine and widespread reform of the Greek economy, doesn't that amount, Taoiseach, to rank hypocrisy?
Thank you, Taoiseach.
And will you answer the question? It's the fundamental question at the root of these struggles that are ongoing. Do people have the right to assert democratic control over decisions which affect their lives?
Thank you. Taoiseach to reply.
The answer to the last question is yes. In this country, the people made that decision. And the government that they elected will be judged on whether the mandate given to the government was fulfilled or not, to fix our public finances and put our country back to work. Of course, that's the essence of democracy. Citizens' votes either elect governments or change governments, and that's their absolute right. Now, in respect of your comments about negotiation, of course, that's the essence of democracy. Citizens' votes either elect governments or change governments, as you normally do, and that's fine. Afterwards, when you had acceptance of the deal on your own literature in the election process, you said this must be implemented in full. And then when you said it doesn't suit me anymore, I'm rejecting it.
Please, Taoiseach has the floor.
I would call that rank hypocrisy. I'd really call it rank hypocrisy. Rank hypocrisy. Now, the next thing is that out of when you mention,
Sorry, order, please.
and believe me, Deputy Adams, that rank hypocrisy would be squared by the gentleman who just spoke there a minute ago with what he did with his class.
The alternative.
I point out to you that Prime Minister Samaras did bring in a primary surplus, was approaching 1% growth in terms of Greece, and was able to get back to the international markets to borrow money. What has happened now? Because people said, we'll abolish all property charges, we'll abolish water charges, we'll abolish everything and pay for nothing. And now it's gone back beyond where it was. And the problem unfortunately, Deputy Adams, is that it's the ordinary people who are now outside the closed banks, who cannot draw their money, where pensioners were told they'd be able to draw their money and they can't. Where they can't get back to the international markets, and where the good name of Greece, where the honourable name of Greece over the years is now being torn down by failure to negotiate. And I would say to the Prime Minister in Greece, it is time to follow through on the papers that are now the subject of a conference call this evening at 4:30. There is time and a way to deal with this, and not to have the 11 million citizens of that historic country done down by politics. The answer to your question is yes. People's votes decide who they elect and who they throw out, and that's the way that it should be. In this case, the mandate given here is not achievable because of the failure of the government to sit at the table and work it out.
Thank you,
I hope that in the next few days that can happen, Deputy Adams.
Come on. Now, if the